Whenever you hear someone try to explain fighting games to new people, they often compare them to chess. It might seem like a weird comparison at first, but honestly, it holds up pretty well. In chess, a lot of decision making is involved and you have to think before you make a move. In fighting games, it's the same way, except everything happens in real time and it isn't exactly turn-based. Regardless, thinking before you act in both of these games is very important because that one decision you make could shift momentum in your favor greatly or lead to a disastrous loss. So what exactly is the thinking process like in both of these games? What do you have to pay attention to before you make a move? Well, in chess, of course, players have to scan the entire board before they make their move. In fighting games, however, there are 3 things you have to pay attention to before making a decision: the opponent's past actions, the resources on the screen, and the opposing character's tendencies. I'll be going over each of these 3 things throughout the video, but these are part of the 3 rules you have to follow in order to make well-informed decisions in whatever fighting game you play. By following the rules I outlined throughout this video, you'll be thinking like a top player in no time. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. The first rule of fighting games you must follow in order to make well-informed decisions throughout the match is to pay attention to what your opponent is doing. Actively observing your opponent's behavior to certain things that you do and certain situations that they are put in can give you an idea of what they might do the next time they are put into those situations. For example, when you knock your opponent down and go for a immediate attack, notice what the opponent does when they wake up. Do they block, do they reversal, or do they attack? Whatever they do, you should keep it in mind for the next time when you put them in that situation. If they attacked on wake up previously, it makes sense to go for a melee next time. If they reversaled, it makes sense to block next time. But overall, the concept of paying attention to what your opponent is doing can be applied to all kinds of situations, such as round start, neutral, offense, and defense. If your opponent jumped at you at the first round start, keeping your eyes open for a jump at the next round start is a pretty good idea. The important thing is to see what the opponent is doing a lot in certain situations and counter from there. Is your opponent very aggressive in neutral? Do they just throw out projectiles a lot? When pressured on defense, do they block a lot? Think about these kinds of things. Lastly, you can assume a lot of what the opponent will do in other situations based on the response to one situation. If your opponent baited your wake-up reversal, you can safely assume that the opponent will bait other things throughout the match, such as burst or attacks to whiff punish. Making decisions based on your opponent's past actions is a pretty smart way to make well-informed decisions throughout the match, but it's not the only thing that should inform your decision making. When learning your opponent and countering their options, you should think twice before picking risky options that could make you lose a ton of life. Let me explain. The second rule of fighting games you must follow in order to make well-informed decisions throughout the match is to watch the resources. Always be aware of the information shown on the screen, such as the opponent's combo potential, EX meter, super meter, positioning, and your health. A lot of times, you lose because you simply did not look at the screen. So why is this important in the context of paying attention to the opponent? Well, let's take this example of when both players are in neutral. Let's say you notice that the opponent likes to run at you a lot in neutral. At first glance, it makes sense to go for pokes to catch them in the middle of their run, but it's vital to understand that some pokes are more riskier than others at certain times in the match. If the opponent has a lot of combo potential, super meter available, and better positioning, you could get comboed into a super attack that could put you right into the corner. Looking at the information shown on the screen could have helped you think twice about throwing out that poke. Now you might look at this and think, well, then this means I should always take the throw, or I should never throw out projectiles mid-screen. You're kinda getting the picture, but playing too low risk will only make you predictable. It's not that you should never do risky things, it's just that there's a time and place for everything. You should only go for high risk moves if you know for sure that the opponent is gonna get hit by it.
Into the neutral again.
It's even better to do if you know your opponent is currently lacking EX moves, super meter, and other resources that could make you explode, making it a low risk option at that moment. For example, in Fatal Fury City of the Wolves, when characters are in overheat state, they can't do EX moves. Combine that with them not having super meter, and they basically don't really have any scary damage presence. These are the kinds of things you'll have to be paying attention to during matches. Overall, you'll have to play less risky while learning your opponent for a bit longer to confirm some of their true habits, or use low risk moves that could counter the option you want to be. It's also worth noting that the value of low reward options like throws and projectiles instantly increases if they can kill the opponent. Whenever something is happening that doesn't take a lot of focus or removes one of the players away from the game, such as combos, supers, and when both you and the opponent are being passive, you have a little time to glance around at resources and data the game gives you. You can also predict what the opponent will do based on what's happening on the screen. Some opponents will play more cautiously when they are low on health, for example. Lastly, time and health are also very important factors to consider when watching your resources. If you have more health than the opponent, you can just simply control the life lead and not really push yourself to take any risk. If time is low, running down the clock becomes a very valid strategy when you have a life lead. And honestly, even if you're losing, if there is a lot of time on the clock, it's not the end of the world, so you don't have to be so aggressive.
Justin Wong! Oh my god!
With rule number 1 and rule number 2 in mind, this leads us into the final rule of fighting games you must follow in order to make well-informed decisions throughout the match: knowing the character tendencies. Whatever fighting game you play, the more you improve at paying attention to your opponents and watching resources, the more your matchup knowledge will increase. As you fight more of the cast and different players, you'll pick up on certain character traits that people have while playing matches. These are known as character tendencies and can be pretty useful to know against opponents that you have never fought before. For example, you might be going up against a Ladiva player in Grand Blue Fantasy Versus that you've never fought before, but thanks to your matchup experience, you're well aware that most Ladivas love to use their sweep in random scramble situations, they love to grapple or jump against your projectiles, and they love to use Lariat in neutral. With this information in mind, you can go into the match knowing what the Ladiva player is likely to do in certain situations based on previous experiences playing or watching other Ladiva players. Overall, your goal is to figure out what each character is likely to do when they are in neutral, when they are cornered, and when they are on offense. Just figure out what are some things you need to be looking for in different situations against a character and learn how to deal with them. It's also worth noting that some characters unlock the ability to go through projectiles when they have their super meter full, so looking at the screen is definitely important in matchups. But on the topic of matchups, I'd like to provide an extra simple tip on how to create some useful matchup notes. If you play the game a lot, you'll definitely have a few set of characters that you absolutely hate playing against or have a hard time dealing with. So, write these characters down in your notes. When playing against them in casuals, write down and keep in mind of what the things you're having trouble with in between games. After finishing your games, you can go into training mode and figure out how to deal with the problems, or ask a higher level player who might already have the answer to it. Bringing it all together, let's use an example of how following these rules can apply in the middle of a match. Let's say you're planning on using your invincible reversal during your opponent's pressure. Sounds like a neat idea, but let's think before we commit. Ask yourself, can I explode for doing this? If not, then this could be safe for you to do, as your opponent doesn't have enough EX meter, super meter, or combo potential to make your mistake feel punishing. If yes, then we also have to ask ourselves if we know for sure that the opponent is going to get hit by the DP. Remember, only telling ourselves that we will never take risks will only make us predictable. If you know for sure that the opponent is going to get hit by the reversal, then it's safe to go for it, since you have your opponent's past actions locked in and potentially any matchup tendencies. If you don't know for sure that the opponent is going to get hit by the reversal, then just don't do it at all, as it's just a serious gamble at that point. Using character tendencies, the opponent's past actions, and the resources on the screen to inform your decisions mid-match will take you very far in fighting games. It may seem overwhelming now, but be sure to take your time applying each rule one at a time. Honestly, making any attempt to follow these rules in a match can take you a long way. Thank you all for watching, and let me know what fighting game guides you would like to see in the future, and make sure to have a blessed day.